Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to reconnect with Dirk Beveridge, founder of Unleash Wholesale Distribution. This is my second conversation with Dirk, mainly because he's a great guy and a provocative thinker when it comes to the distribution space. But 4 weeks ago, just as we were coming to grips with the crisis of COVID-19, Dirk launched a series of Sunday conversations called Leading During the Coronavirus Pandemic. These online conversations featured several thought leaders and offered suggestions and observations on our current state. Around Easter, he pivoted to Shift to Tomorrow, where he added some deep dive Wednesday webinars geared towards looking for opportunities to innovate in a time of crisis. I highly encourage you to check out Dirk's work, and we will provide links in the show notes. Quick word of warning. This episode is a little longer than the typical distribution talk show. If you've ever wanted to experiment with listening at a faster rate of playback, this might be the episode to do it. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL prides themselves on their rapid response customer support team. They maintain a very low 1 customer support person per 20 user ratio. Now, I have a long history with this company. I met the lead developer several years ago when he attended my inventory management seminar. He didn't just attend, he absorbed the content. Every couple of years, I head up to their Michigan headquarters to talk about product enhancements and see what they're up to. I always come away impressed. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. All right. Hey, Dirk, great to see you again. And thanks for coming back on Distribution Talk.
Jason, are you kidding me? Thanks for having me, man. I always love our conversations. I learn every time we get together. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Absolutely. Hey, let's dive right into it. We've already done an episode with your history, so we already know about that. So let's talk about what's going on today. You know, you've really been kind of leading the charge here in taking a look at leaders and how leadership is addressing this pandemic, and really took a very proactive approach at bringing people together and forcing conversations, you know, that maybe people didn't know how to start or get going on. So tell me, what was the epiphany? What was that moment that you said, I got to talk about this?
Yeah, I will. But first of all, I'll tell you, I didn't know what I was doing either. So let's just start, right? I mean, but to your point, we took action because we felt compelled to take action. You know, and I guess the epiphany was the week of March 10th, I guess that would have been. I was out on the road 4 days, got home at about 2:00 in the morning, Thursday night, Friday morning, got into the office probably about 8:00 and sat there thinking. And I was tired from the week, but, you know, talking to people all week, and I started sensing a shift. And so it literally, Jason, was 10 a.m. Friday, March 13th, when I just had this epiphany. And the epiphany was the world is going to change over the weekend. Mm-hmm. And that's when I decided to put my annual plan on the shelf, our quarterly plans on the 12th. We were getting ready to launch registration for our November summit. Right. But I just had to take it and shelf it.
Yeah.
And I got my VP of design, Bethany Hepler, on a call, and we strategized and we talked for a while. We both agreed the world was going to change. We said, what are we going to do? And before we said what we're going to do, we said, what does our tribe need? You know, and we came up with 4 things. They need to be hugged. They need to be inspired. They need insight, and they need connected. Now, when I say they, I might have been talking about myself, bud.
You might have been, yes, and I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think that resonated, right? And you look at what we've all been going through, and I think still today, what are we, 6 weeks into it or so? And
right.
I know I'll take a hug every now and then, right?
Sure. People are going through an unprecedented, difficult time. I mean, heart-wrenching time. Not only, you know, our loved ones, you know, passing away, getting ill, quarantined, you know, financial insecurity. And again, where many people, especially, you know, younger people, and I think you alluded to this in that the letter you wrote, that younger people had never seen this before. and we had incredibly low unemployment before this. And all of a sudden, it was like a flip, the flip of a
Yeah.
switch. And,
Yeah.
so yes, do they need hugs? Absolutely. And I think everybody needs to be propped up occasionally, during that
Yeah.
time.
I'm listening to you and you got me thinking. And so two groups, right? There's the boomers like me, right?
Mhm,
And maybe let's even talk about some of those individuals that have given their life to
mhm,
their career, either as an employee or maybe as the family that has owned this business, right? They've
mhm,
literally given their life to this entity. So that's
mhm.
one. But then you also just mentioned the others,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so when you think about the elders, maybe at this time they have the right to look in the rearview mirror and say, my God, everything I've worked for,
mhm,
everything, my blood, my sweat, my tears, the risk we've taken, the time away from my family, all of that, right? And it can be gone like that.
mhm.
And then you flip that over, what you got me thinking about now, the young people, they're not looking back, they're looking forward.
Right,
And
right.
they're saying, life is good, the world is good, the world is just.
Even, fair, my opportunities are boundless. Yeah,
Yeah, right?
yeah,
And then all of a sudden, that's taken away. So this is an
yeah,
interesting perspective. I haven't thought of it until you just prompted it
yeah.
there.
Right. And then you've got, the crazy Gen Xers like myself, just like, we don't really care. We're looking at you guys, you guys fend for yourself. We're gonna keep our own boat and you don't trip over mine. All right, okay. So that was a little bash on my own generation there, but
That's all right.
yeah.
Self-awareness, Jason, they say is a good thing.
It is a good thing. And as we were talking about the boomers, a lot of these folks had just recovered from '07, '08, '09, that devastation there. And they thought, okay, my retirement was built back up, my portfolio. I've got myself in a position where I think I can go ahead and retire. And then the rug just got pulled out again. Now what's going to happen?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know what scares the hell out of me? And Jason, and I tell this story, it was probably about 2 years ago. I'm up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, doing a full day sales training program for building materials lumber distributor.
Yeah, I know them. I know
Di-
exactly. I've been there. I know
Yeah.
exactly which company you're talking about.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I'm doing this program. And at lunch, some guy my age comes up to me and says, Dirk, this is great. Thank you. Oh man. And says, I wish I would have had this years ago. I said, tell me your story. And he told me, he said, Dirk, up until I think it was 60 days ago, up until 60 days ago, I owned my own distribution business and I had to sell it. Those were I had
Interesting.
to
Yeah.
sell it. And then his words were, Jason, and I have nothing to show for it. So
Yeah.
to your point, that scares the
Yeah.
living hell out of me, right? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
to our point, your business, my business, the
Yeah.
distributors we serve, right?
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
in the same boat.
Yeah.
That we work our butts off, our tails off, and then all of a sudden this pandemic comes across. And what scares me to death
Mhm.
is that there might be other individuals, to your point, that's saying I have nothing to show for it. It could be somebody who loses their job
Yep.
after 3 years or 4 years, and I have nothing to show for it.
Right.
It could be that distribution business that or rep agency or consulting firm that for one reason or another they were busy but didn't have the cash reserves,
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the ability for change management in their organization,
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the grit, whatever, right? And it scares the hell out of me.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about, again, both you and I have been through, we were, through 9/11, then through the '08, '09 times. And, at least my business, I mean, took a pretty significant hit, but there was opportunity. There was, I was still able to jump back in and get back in and rebuild.
Yep.
I guess I feel some compassion for those who, maybe have gotten to the end of the run and said, I don't have the energy to rebuild again. And then what's next?
Yeah. Boy, I don't know where to go with that. Quite
Yeah, I
frankly.
know. I know. It's
So,
challenging.
yeah,
Yeah.
I told you before you turned the mic on. You and I were supposed to record this 2 days ago, right?
Yep.
I
Yep.
canceled on you
Yep.
because I flat out burnt out. I
Yeah.
had to walk away for 2 days. I was absolutely exhausted. And, I'm 58 and I'll be 59 in 2 months. And hell, I don't know. Would I have been exhausted after running hard for 45 days nonstop if I was still 35? I don't know. But, to your point, these are times where we got to take care of ourselves, our health, our thinking, our mindset. I think that's absolutely
Right.
critical. And, I think one of the things that I think, which is great that you're doing on this podcast, Jason, is I think connectedness is so important. I really do.
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
now is not the time to hole ourselves up in our business, even though we are quarantined and the like, finding ways like this. And you're doing great work with this, right? To help people stay connected, to talk through things and to work through
Sure.
things. I think it's critical.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I want to be able to give people a voice. I think all of us are dealing with this situation in a different way. And we all have a different methodology of going through, anger, grief, whatever it may be, allowing people to go through it and speak through it on their own terms. And a lot of this is really partially, I think that have been some guests in your Sunday calls that you've done that with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you bring up something. I'm pulling something up as we talk. You talk about the phases, the anger, the grief,
Yeah.
and the like. And
Yeah.
and I tell you honestly about me crashing on Monday and Tuesday, and I just had to rest. And I was talking to Bethany on my team today, and here's what she says. I mean, just boom, makes sense to me. The phases of COVID: adrenaline, exhaustion, crash, annoyance, and impatience,
Oh, yeah.
and then climb out of it. Right? I mean, it's brilliant how she captured that,
She
right?
did.
Adrenaline, exhaustion, crash, annoyance, impatience. And just her helping me understand that, right, is pretty cool. And one of the things that stemmed from that, I don't know if you saw it, but I posted on LinkedIn yesterday or so a post of me crossing the Ironman finish
I
line
did see that. Yes, I
with
did.
my
Yeah.
kids and all this. And I told this story. I've always wanted to build this in my presentations. I never have. That's the first time I told people. But the story is hilarious. I'm 15 miles into the run. I'd done my 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike. I got a 26.2-mile marathon to go. I'm at mile 15. And man, I'm giving it everything I got. Man, I'm running up the hill, right? This rolling hill. And I'm running, man. I'm feeling good. I got 11 miles to go. And I'm going to be an Ironman, right?
Yes, you are.
And I look over to the left, and here's a woman, honest to God, Jason, 20 years my senior, and she's passing me. First, she's 20 years my senior, she's passing me. But then I realized that she's walking, and I'm running, and she still is passing me. But the point was, that I pulled from that now, 30 years later, 20 years later, is that, it's all about endurance. We're in this for the long haul, and we're going to need the grit. We're going to need to know that what we do is important enough, that what we do contributes to so many lives and to society. And, I love talking about the goodness of America. I love talking about the goodness of North America. I love talking about the goodness of people. There's so much good in this world. There's so much good in people. There's so much good in capitalism. There's so much good in the world of distribution. You know what? We owe it to ourselves to dig deep and find that grit that gets us over that finish line. I put in this letter, this open letter, this statistic that I don't know, you probably knew this, but it just hit me just in all of this, that says that if distribution was a country at about, there's differing numbers, right?
Right.
But at about $6.9 trillion,
yeah,
the GDP of distribution, we would be the third largest country on the planet. I mean, that's important stuff.
That's astounding to me. And I think if I remember right, reading through there, what was it, 29% of the US GDP or something like that?
Yeah.
And I remember actually when I started on the consulting side, it was considerably lower than that. I mean, really considerably lower. And I was kind of astounded when I saw that statistic that you had put on there. I thought, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And we are serving a very big deal here.
Yeah. And I really love this because as I was doing some consulting sometime for a client, and I didn't sell it. So here's how good of a consultant the sales guy I am. My recommendation was kind of a rebrand for them that says, you know what? Yeah. You think you're in the supply business of product. You think you're in the supply business of whatever's on the shelf. My premise was you're not. My premise is you're building this damn country. You're keeping the country safe. You're building the infrastructure. You're keeping it safe. And my comment back then was, you supply America. And to me, that's what I would have branded this company around. And I'd forgotten about that until I saw that statistic, and that's what I wrote in this book. I think all of your listeners, man, it's important to find that endurance. Dirk, you're
Yep.
talking to yourself, right?
Yeah. 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 For
Because
sure.
those that we serve, Jason, I really think it's big. It's important. They supply America, and as I
Yeah.
say in there, you supply America with jobs, you
Mhm.
supply America with meaning, with purpose, with
Mhm.
economic vitality, with community support, generous donations, tax revenues, community spirit. It goes on and on and on. And man, and I think you and I are seeing it, right? I think
Absolutely.
your listeners are rallying, man. And the way they're taking care of their own, the way they're taking care of their customers, their communities, their families, their employees, I'm inspired by it.
I think, Dirk, it's interesting. One of the reasons that I got into the distribution consulting side, from leaving the family business, I wanted to stay in it. And the thing I love most about, privately held distribution is they have always taken care of their own. I mean, it's just one of those qualities that has always drawn me back towards that. And I mean, I hate to say it, away from much larger entities. I am not attracted to much larger entities because I look at these smaller companies and how they take care of people in the face of crisis. And I've listened to what they have done to take care of people through this. And I mean, I know so many of the owners of these businesses who quit taking a paycheck well over a month ago. They stopped, 6, 8 weeks ago, said, nope, I'm going to take care of people. And we're just going to make this work. And those are the ones, I guess it takes a crisis, though, to where you see that, but
There
I
you
know
go.
it's in there all the time.
All the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
you betcha. So one of the things that we started in January is a program called My Life's Work.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And we've got 7 CEOs who are going to be transitioning to the next generation, and we meet quarterly. But I went and visited each of them, the 7 of them,
Mhm,
before we actually met quarterly, right? To
mhm,
hear their
mhm.
story and to learn. And I remember Brian just telling me, he says, Dirk, he says, every one of them out there has given me their life. He says, I owe it to them to do everything I can to ensure this business survives and thrives as I transition it over to the next generation. I mean, my goodness, huh? I mean,
Yeah,
that was before COVID-19.
absolutely.
And I know I'll run through walls for people like that,
Mhm,
right? Anything we can do to support.
absolutely. I had a really great conversation, a couple weeks ago on the show with Kip Miller, and you had
Yeah,
him on. You
yeah,
had him on, and the things that we're talking about right now are things that he brought up in our conversation about, that they don't sell plumbing supply. They're building airplanes, they're doing this. The caretaking, the servant style, leadership, all of those things. Just he was exuding those. But I mean, you and I see this on a regular basis with the clients that we work with. You can step back a little bit and say, wow, those folks impressed me, that those really impressed me and frankly inspired me to continue doing this, because that's the reason I love distribution right there.
and here's what I'll say too with that, okay, and which is not talked about a lot, but I'll put it out there. What the Kip Millers and all of the, let's call them the C-suite, the
Yep.
owners, the president, okay, I'll put it out there. What they do is not easy.
Oh, you got that
The,
right.
the,
Yeah.
the weight of responsibility they have
Hmm.
in good times and bad times, not
Yep.
right. The risk they take, the vision they create for the future, what they create out of thin air, which is nothing more than an idea at some time.
Hmm.
We, the collective we, I believe, take that entrepreneurialism for granted, that it's just there, it happens. It doesn't, man.
Mm.
It doesn't. It takes creators, it takes
Hmm.
builders, it takes commitment, it takes a drive and a passion to build and to create and to contribute to society to make that stuff happen. And so you and I are doing a lot of talking about employees and all that, but I want to take just a minute to say the families that own these businesses and the individuals running the businesses, I salute the living hell out of you for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the folks who are going to get us through this. Absolutely. They're going to lead the way. Now, with inspiration, they will lead employees and employees will do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah,
But it requires that spark and that vision that, hey, we can make it out of this.
yeah, yeah.
Because if the leader doesn't have that, nobody's getting out.
So, when I wrote the book Innovate years ago, right? As I looked at that transcript, I didn't know I was using these words, Jason, but throughout that manuscript were the words will, energy, and focus. Will, energy, and focus. And it was illuminating to me, to your point, that says, you know what? Transformative leaders, they have the will. Something is so damn important to them, something, whatever it is, that
Mm-hmm.
they're going to break all barriers, all obstacles to make something happen. They have the energy, right? They don't allow what happened to me the last 2 days to happen to them when I was
Mm-hmm.
exhausted, right? No, they find that energy to continually, they take care of themselves and they bring that energy to whatever needs to be done throughout the organization. And then the focus. They know what needs to get done, man, and they get it done. And that's one of the things we wrote about in our open letter to distributor shift to tomorrow
Yeah.
is the focus that has been brought to bear to keep this plane flying, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Make sure that this business continues on. It's sustainable, right? We find a way through this pandemic. That required focus. That didn't just happen.
Mm-hmm.
Without focus,
Right.
the business closes the doors.
Right.
So
Right.
to your point, I think three things I see in these leaders are will, energy, and focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that, you've had a lot of folks. I mean, you've been running this about 6 weeks, you said, or what is
Yeah,
this?
four under. I've been having these Sunday conversations
Yeah.
for 4 weeks, from March 13th up until Easter,
Okay. Okay.
and then at Easter we call it the Easter pivot.
Okay.
We pivoted away from the leading through the coronavirus pandemic to shift to tomorrow.
Right.
And we've been doing that for 2 weeks. We got 4 more weeks to go. And Jason, as you know, our thinking there is, as we've been talking about, we've been working real hard at leading through this current crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to be part of the conversation to say, let's make sure our eyes are up,
Mm-hmm.
that we're looking at the horizon. Yes, we got to keep managing today, but
Mm-hmm.
let's make sure our eyes up looking at the horizon, knowing that this too shall pass, not without pain, not without struggle, not without hardship.
Right.
But we need to have our eyes up towards that horizon and quote unquote to shift to tomorrow, to start thinking about where's the opportunity in this. And we're not minimizing the hardship and the pain,
Right.
and all that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but start looking for the opportunities.
And I think that to that very point, so many of the things that we see on TV and if we, we're watching the news, it's all about the downtrodden, the struggle,
Yeah.
the pain and the suffering. And maybe that's the thing that sells news bites and what it is.
It is.
But, what I sense, in a lot of the reading that obviously the open letter, but conversations you've been having and the posts that you've been making, I almost want to say that you're enthusiastic or excited, that there's a giddiness. You're almost like a little kid on Christmas waiting, it's like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen
Yeah.
next? And that's the contagious part. I want to see that part become contagious. People excited for what happens next.
Yeah. I love it. Giddiness, huh? Okay.
Giddy. We're going to go with giddy. Yeah.
All right.
I'll look for a thesaurus later. But.
Thanks for that. Jason, we have a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a choice to wallow in what has happened to us,
Yeah.
or to create our future, right? And I'm not the best at it. Don't get me wrong, right? I had to crash for 2 days, right? But
Sure.
I elect to create the future, and I think that's what we have the opportunity to do, right? That we don't know exactly how. We do know the future is going to be different. We do know our customers are going to want to do business in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to want to do business in a different way. How our society lives, work, and plays is going to be different. Not exactly 100% sure how, but, I suspect digital transformation,
Sure.
Sure. is accelerating here.
Absolutely.
In a big, big way. I suspect, mega trend that we used to help distributors build strategies around, a mega trend of urbanization. I suspect, from what I see, I don't know, but I suspect, that trend's going to reverse and people are going to start moving out of the cities and they're not going to want to be as condensed as much.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, if you look at for the fear of contagion, that's going to Maybe I do need a little elbow room. Haven't
Yeah.
had it, but it's time for a little elbow room.
And so now then the flip side of that little elbow room, now you look at it more specifically, more tactically for the restaurants, and let's say then the food service equipment distributors and the food service distributors, right? Because of that fear of contagion, now people may or may not, may not going to want to be packed into those restaurants quite as much.
Right.
So what is that going to do to the environment? What is that going to do to the vibe? What is that going to do to why you actually went there? You didn't go there just for the food.
Nope.
Right? So how we live, work, and play is going to change. And I think I still get excited about that. I think trying to figure that out is pretty cool. And you can't see it, but on my back wall, I have what I call our Easter pivot. And that's our whole business model transformation that we're driving here. And we're taking digital transformation more serious than we ever have before. Mm-hmm. We've always done things digitally, but the way people are learning to collaborate right now, the way people are taking courses online right now, businesses are going to want, and employees, I think, are going to want to collaborate, learn, interact in a different way on the other side of this. So we're looking at that ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think distributors, that's another thing. Distributors have got to start thinking about their model of educating their customer and their employees. So I get excited about the opportunities that are there.
I think one of the things that excites me is that this provokes conversations that have never taken place in the company before. That's the exciting part for me, is that even though we are a bit disconnected, physically, I guarantee there are more face-to-face conversations going on today through this medium than there have been in the past. And I've challenged in either podcasts or writings, or I can't remember exactly where, I've challenged, managers, people to check in with people face to face. You have this golden opportunity to get eyeball to eyeball with somebody, even if you're not in the same physical space.
Yeah, without question. And again, people are yearning for it. They're yearning to be hugged, inspired, insight, and connectedness.
That's right.
And so can I flip this on you let me be the host? Let me be the host for a second.
Yes.
So I know with ASA and maybe others, you're doing this Connect program.
Congratulations.
And that ties into what we're talking about here. I think timing for it was just absolutely perfect.
In the face of tragedy, all of a sudden this timing jumped out. You're absolutely correct that this ability to create these online groups, these groups of, in this case, the ASA, the plumbing distribution people, are connecting on a monthly basis, and like job description, like titles, are talking. So, I'll have a group of purchasing managers, for example, and getting them together. And I'll tell you, Dirk, as the facilitator, I don't have to say much.
Right.
I really don't. Just get them in the room for me. And actually, you're right. It's tough. I do have to bite my tongue often. But you're right. The timing was fairly fortunate in that people were yearning for that connection.
I think what you found there was that connection was there. Again, I'll use the word accelerate it. The pandemic just accelerated it. And so I applaud you having that vision and then actually putting that model together and making it work. I know you're just doing a great service for ASA, all of their members and the individuals in that program. So
thank you. I'm just thrilled Mike said yes. I'm just when I pitched him on this thing a while back. But I think where the challenge was that they were really trying to connect people through a once a year event, face-to-face event. And I truly believe that connection has to occur much more frequently. And now we have the technology to do that.
And we're learning how to do it.
That's right. That's right. We're really, and
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It is. And occasionally, people bomb, they jump into these meetings and maybe, are inappropriate, and so we're all learning a little bit about that. But I think that people now will demand that going forward, that this is not going to be a passing fad, that this, I'll tell you, and when you and I spoke actually on one of the on the Sunday calls, I said that, we have been the bottleneck. The technology has not been the bottleneck. We have been the bottleneck. And now it's open and it's free flowing and we're going. I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle. There's no way.
100% agree. And so again, because the genie is out of the bottle in so many areas, right?
Yeah.
I just see opportunity, right? If we have the mindset, right? If we have the mindset to say, there is opportunity out there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there is. And, so many different things will change.
And, so to help that thinking in my open letter to distributors, one of the things I've done is I've outlined 13 different premises. Jason, you know that we have this model of the innovative distributor that says that if you're going to be relevant, profitable, sustainable in this age of disruption, real disruption now, you got to focus on 5 things: your vision, your culture, your value proposition, your business model, and transformative leadership. And now I think when I get giddy is I think each of those 5 things are going to require change and in some cases transformation. So in this open letter at shifttotomorrow.com, I've put in 13 premises. I don't know if they're right, but this is Dirk Beveridge thinking based on talking to others and distributors and saying, here's 13 premises based on that model of the innovative distributor that you just said, it's exciting the conversations that are going on.
Sure.
And as a leader in a business, if I want to structure, is that the right word? If I want to generate some conversation internally about opportunity, these 13 premises are a starting point, and that's it. And by the way, there's probably 1,300 possible premises out there.
Sure.
I've got the creativity to come up with
somewhere.
13.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you just hit upon a point, that the leaders of these organizations, they want to start these conversations, but I don't think they know how. And that's really where this will help guide them, to these conversations. I mean, I could probably not speak to any one of them that said, no, I think we're just going to wait this out and we're just going to see what happens. I think they really want to have these conversations, but maybe they just don't know how to. Maybe they've been out of practice for a long time.
Haven't had to, right?
Right.
Haven't had to, right? So how do you start the conversation? Then how do you actually create some momentum and some action out of it? And that's the important and the fun part.
Going back to these now conversations over the last 4 weeks, what is something that's just absolutely struck you? Just actually made Dirk Beveridge stop and just stop and think and want to do something different.
I'll go back to the very first one, right?
Yeah.
When everything's going on. And we were talking about the future of work. And what it dawned on me in these conversations is that, sounds simplistic, but the future of work is now, right? That, again, work was changing, how we're going to communicate, how we're going to collaborate, how we're going to get processes automated, all of that, right? What technology is going to be available to drive performance and productivity. Well, we've been forced into that now.
Mm-hmm.
And so the future of work is now. And then the word thrive came out of it. And that there's really an opportunity to use this as a moment in time to help our people thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, I don't know if this is appropriate for your podcast, but I don't know if the word love is used a lot in business. But this is Dirk. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but this is me. I define love as being equal to growth. If you love somebody, you're going to be committed to their growth. If you love a plant, you're going to help that plant grow. If you love your dog, you're going to feed it well. You're going to help the dog grow. If you love your organization, you're going to help it grow. If you love your society, you're going to help it grow. And if you love a person, spouse, child, family member, employee, associate, your peer, you're going to find a way to help them grow. And so in this conversation, right, about the future of work, all of that came together to me. And what excites me is I think we can talk about love. I think we can talk about real care. And I know Kip Miller, man, you guys talk a lot, right? It's built into who they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that absolutely excited me. Another one that got me thinking, I don't know if it got me giddy, but it got me thinking on the other side is, Jason, over the last, say 2.5 years, I've facilitated, I think, 36 different think tanks with presidents, owners, CEOs of businesses and the like. And some of those focused on digital transformation. And one of the premises that came out of those digital transformation conversations was the word runway. We have runway here. Yes, digital transformation is important. Yes, it's coming, but we don't have to dive into it because, and you pick the reasons, our customers aren't there yet. The market isn't ready for it yet, right? The technology isn't proven yet, right? Whatever those were. So we have runway. And that became accepted. In fact, I got to tell you, I bought into it.
Yeah.
I bought into it.
Yeah. Okay.
But here we are now through all of these conversations I've been having on Sundays and now Wednesdays is, the conclusion is that runway has turned into a drag strip. And that runway for digital transformation has absolutely been obliterated. And I really believe we are going to have to take what was a luxury, a perceived luxury of transforming our operations, looking at our business model and how we can use digital solutions to enhance the customer experience and the like. I think we've used the word accelerated. That is just absolutely accelerated. And I think we're going to have to help. We're going to have to help. And I'm not a technologist, but I think you and I owe it to our tribes to help them think about that and work through that in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was interesting. I had another conversation with my business partner, Marshall, and we were talking about it's now appropriate to ask these questions, and I think that people sometimes get stopped by decorum and when is it the appropriate time to talk or to ask these critical questions. And I think yesterday was that day. It's time now. Ask these critical questions. What are those barriers to your transformation, or push them away? Absolutely.
Push those barriers away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get the barriers out of the way. It's interesting when you were talking about runway, it takes me back to something that, my oldest son's the head of the basketball program over here in Bend. And he loves to say, are you problem solvers or excuse makers? And that that's that 2x4 to the back of my head. I was like, okay, I get this now. I'm getting it. So that's one of the things he instills in these players is, are you excuse maker or are we problem solvers? And that's everything that he builds this program around is we want to be problem solvers.
Yeah.
That's just one that's always, it's resonated with me pretty recently as well.
Yeah. I absolutely. And it makes a ton of sense. I think, and I'm struggling to pull it out of my mind, we can't even be problem solvers right now. We have to go beyond problem solving. Look, our first 4 weeks after March 13th was about problem solving. It was leading through this coronavirus pandemic, right? Solving those problems, keeping that plane flying. Right now, our mindset has got to shift all to creation, right? It's got to, we know the world's going to change. We got to identify those opportunities. And then we're not going to have to solve a problem. We're going to have to seize an opportunity that's out there. And I think that's more than semantics. My first of those 13 premises is based on vision. And what that actually reads, Jason, is that I think the pandemic will change society and how we work, live, and play in untold ways. Leaders must develop their strategic foresight capabilities to clearly understand what products, services, and experiences will be valued on the other side of this pandemic. That is not problem solving, right? That's strategic foresight. And that's creating something that doesn't exist. It's not just putting your finger in the dam to stop the water, right?
Right.
It's building a whole nother dam to change the course of the river.
That's iPhone stuff right there, man.
Right.
Don't even know you need it to,
Yeah.
But you want it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. It's vision, creation, and honestly, letting loose, let loose to the past and find those, opportunities out there and get a little weird, get a little crazy and, try something different.
You and I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah, we've been known to.
So, if people go to shifttomorrow.com, there's two things. One, they can go and see my open letter to distributors. Second, then they can go to our 6-week program of Sunday conversations and Wednesday deep dive classes. And the reason I bring that up, because I just recorded Wednesday deep dive with Saul Kaplan, who is the founder and chief catalyst of the Business Innovation Factory. And if people who are listening to your show get excited about what you just said, right? About, that visioning and creating something that doesn't exist, I encourage you to go to shifttomorrow.com, register for that. Even if you don't go to any live programs, go there and then scroll to the date of Wednesday, April 29th, and find my 60-minute conversation with Saul Kaplan on business model innovation. And he walked us through this entire 4-phase process, the methodology. And it's not easy. Right? It looks real pretty on the slides and all that. Sure. But the point is there's a process, because you talked about we don't
Right.
even know the questions to ask. We don't know how to go through business model innovation. He just walked us through that. And you know what's really exciting? Why not exciting? What's informative to me based on what you said? The first step is you have to shift your lens. It's what you said, right? You have to think differently. You have to see. And you know what he said? That's the hardest part to what you said.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Because we're
for sure.
so ingrained in the way, not only how we've done things, but the way things worked. And so he helped us, think about how we can shift our lens in our thinking.
Sounds fantastic. Well, hey, my friend, you've been rolling here for a little longer than usual, but
I was really worried. I was really worried that I only had about 8 minutes of conversation.
of content. Yeah.
Sorry
That's
about
really
that.
going to happen to you someday. I think when they take away your vocal cords, there's a possibility you might get 8 minutes of content. But tell me, what do you have in store coming up?
Yeah. So as we're recording this, it's Wednesday the 29th. So we've got 4 more weeks coming. And the next week I'm real excited about. And can I just say that? And again, if people
Please.
go live or not.
Yes.
So even before this pandemic, I had this feeling that we have to move away from human capital to the human spirit. And 2 amazing individuals who attended my innovation summit last summer, they've just impacted me in a big way. And the way they impacted me is they left our innovation summit with the thinking that says, you know what, I can change not only my company, but I can change distribution. And these ladies are on fire. And they really, they touched me. And that's what got me thinking, you know what, as leaders, man, we got to get beyond talking about human capital. We got to talk about the human spirit. And so one of my premises is exactly that, is that companies don't change, transform, and innovate, people do. In that light, it's the human spirit that creates all the value in the world and in our businesses. Stop right there. I don't know. I want to explore that. Because, right, the human spirit is what creates all the value in the world and in our businesses. So my premise is there, and then I say leaders have got to accept the calling of unleashing the human spirit so that each employee grows, flourishes, and shines. And if we do that on the other side of this pandemic, can you imagine what we can do in our business, in our communities, in the industry, and for our customers, in our communities, in our country, in our society that we serve? It turns me on. And so that's what we've got coming up the next week. And then the week after that is strategic foresight and the like. And we're going to keep working hard to keep trying to drive this conversation forward, Jason. And thank you for allowing me on your show to further it as well.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And we'll link all the things that you had mentioned and the registration and whatnot, in the show notes, so people will get to you, and they can always go chase us down. We're pretty easy to find these days, and
absolutely.
If we need to know a little bit more. So, my friend, always a pleasure.
But I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate this opportunity. Be well.
All right, take care, my friend. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.